Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Find and Follow podcast, where we are all about helping you find and follow Jesus in your everyday life. Craig, Kyle, and Scott, your Find and Follow podcast hosts, are here again today, hanging out, and second week in a row. So this is good.
Back at it.
We, I think, are back in a rhythm, which is fun and exciting.
Hitting our stride.
Everybody seems a little chipper today. You know, the Sunday, we didn't really talk about it, but the Sunday where it's the turn your clocks back an hour fiasco and debacle of our
Fiasco.
society.
Okay.
It's silly. We should just pick a time and go with it. Anyways, that Sunday morning, people are lively and awake. It's a lot different. You can feel the energy. You can feel the, hey, we've been up for like over an hour just waiting for you guys to get going. This is
As
great.
opposed to the spring when it's a whole different scenario.
They're just not there, a lot of them.
Exactly.
They're just like, I'm tired. But we're here. Things are good. We'll jump into Matthew 26 is where we're at. But I did give myself some credit last week, so I don't know if I got to take it back. But, man, Gonzaga basketball is in full swing. And Amy and I went to the game last Friday night as part of our celebration. It's something we've done for 20 years as a couple. It's one of our favorite things to do is to root on our Zags. And so we went to the game last Friday night. And they're, first game of the season, but they look real good for first game. And it was a legit first game. It was a tough game. It wasn't a Eastern Oregon.
What do you mean? I don't understand what you have to take back. What are you taking back?
That I didn't talk about Zags on the podcast till like way late, and then I was passive-aggressive and blamed you, or maybe aggressive and blamed you about it. But I'm going to be talking about Zags basketball through the season appropriately. But anyways, we had fun celebrating our anniversary. It's one of those blessings where I don't even know if I should say this on the podcast, but even if I say it, people don't believe me. You just stand out front and hold up a finger, and a lot of times you get free tickets.
No, stop. Don't.
Don't tell the secret?
I read a Spokesman Review article the other day about how the Zags ticket in town is one of the hardest tickets to get.
Incredibly.
And like the writer of the article was all frustrated that he has a buddy who lives in Vegas, and he's like, yeah, I watch the Zags every year when they come down. I get tickets. They're pretty cheap. They're pretty affordable. And, yeah, I watch, 2 or 3 Zags games a year. And the guy who's writing the article is a GU alum, and he's like, I can never go to a game. I can never get in. And I was like, don't tell them the secret.
Well, I think we're safe with our audience.
Okay.
They'll keep it between us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
not.
Yeah, and you just have to be willing to not get in. And you have to look a little weird and embarrassed, and you have to be adventuresome and courageous and just go, hey, plan B is we're going to go to dinner earlier and have fun, maybe watching the game at a restaurant. So we were okay with either option. So it is the hardest ticket, but not terribly hard.
But yeah.
But
yeah, because I remember when Lindsay and I was like looking at Craigslist and Marketplace, like, does anybody have a ticket trying to go to a game? And then I found out the secret, like, just show up and see if someone gives you a ticket at the...
Yeah, and not every time we get free tickets, I've bought many a ticket standing out front. They are playing at the Spokane Arena, the first WCC game against Pepperdine in January something. They still have like 1,000 tickets left for that.
So that's what the article was saying. Like when they do that is the only time that us regular folk can get in.
Right. So, anyways, it's something we love to do.
Is that enough Zags talk?
I think so.
Okay,
and I'll brag on my wife. She loves sports just as much as I do. So if people heard, wait, they're still back on. You went to a basketball game for your anniversary? Yeah, my wife loves. She'll watch Sunday Night Football, and I'm like, I'm not going to watch that. She's like, oh, we got to see who's playing, what's happening. I'm like, I'm out. So it's a little different. She loves sport and watching it.
She really does. I've sat in the stands with her at many of your kids' games in the Park and Rec League over in Post Falls. And far and away, I mean, Amy is the loudest clapper and the most enthusiastic person, and she will call out the refs if she thinks they need to be called out. I mean,
don't bring that up, Craig. I'll say nice things about my wife now.
No, in a good way.
In a good way. I mean, you can't help but
fan.
be enthusiastic when you're sitting near Amy in the stands.
She's very good at encouraging. She's got a good, loud clap, and she gets people going. She's a
does.
galvanizer in that way.
Yeah.
Great job, Amy.
Way to go.
Just good.
Way to go.
Just all around.
We were just before we were recording, Harper, you were saying something fun about Harper. Like in the podcast land, we started the podcast pre-Harper. And then
Pre-Harper.
right?
That's how we set dates now. Yeah, this was pre-Harper.
Think about
it
the
is funny though,
history.
right? When you have kids and you're like, oh man, you were 6 months pregnant when we did that thing, right? Like, oh, you were like we had some friends the other day. They're like, oh, last time I saw you, your wife was, really pregnant, and you guys were just about to have a kid. And like, now there's this almost 1.5-year-old running around,
Yeah.
right, and talking, and
And you were telling me a story. I think you should tell it, but it was fun. You were talking with your daughter.
Yeah, so she's almost a year and a half. She'll be a year and a half next month, but she's got a phenomenal vocabulary and loves to talk, loves to parrot everything and repeat everything. But yeah, we're getting ready this morning, and she was a little bit more fussy because she wanted a waffle, and we didn't have any waffles. So she's already articulating what she wanted. I put her down in her high chair, and she said, "Waffle?" I said, "Sorry, you ate the last waffle yesterday. We got pancakes." And she said, "Waffle." And then she got the pouty lip a little bit, and waffle. Oh, she wanted a waffle, and I was like, "I'm sorry, lady, we don't got waffles."
That's awesome,
We got
though.
eggs and pancakes, and then she fussed for a little bit. Waffle, waffle, waffle.
Did you just say, you know what? A pancake is a waffle,
Yeah,
okay? It
I'm
just
like,
doesn't have the
it's-
squares.
It's the same thing, except the waffle that we had, they got a little vanilla flavor to them. They're the
Oh.
protein pancakes and waffles.
Okay.
And the protein waffles, one that I got from the freezer section, has a little vanilla flavor. So they are a little
A little
sweeter.
sweeter. She wanted
Yeah.
candy
she
for
wanted
breakfast.
She wanted the sweet version.
She's not no dummy.
Yeah. I was like, sorry. And then she loves fruit so much so that we have to hold off on giving her the fruit till after she eats the other stuff.
Yeah.
So then she was just, after she got done saying waffle about 6 or 7 trillion times, she just started saying blueberries. So then she just wanted blueberries. And I was like, you got to eat some pancake and eggs, lady, and then you can have some blueberries. So
Well, that's fun. It's a stage, and I'll just try to transition it. It's one of the ways we communicate with God, where we can. It's not bad to have let your request be known to God, like, hey, I need this or want this, but then you begin to have different layers of prayer where you're talking with God, and then you're listening to God, and so same with our kids in the first whatever it takes couple years, where you're just like you're talking at them and they talk at you, but you're not having hey, I want waffle for breakfast. No, we ran out. We have pancakes today. You guys had that conversation just at the 18-month dialogue level, but it was the same conversation, which is super fun with people. But it's also how we connect and follow Jesus. Is not just here's my list like Santa Claus prayer request here, dun, 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 which is important and we should do, but it's also talking with God and God, what do you think about the things I'm asking for, and what do you say, and then listening with it,
Some of my most meaningful prayer times have been when I asked that very question, Scott. I was just thinking about that. I get done asking for something or praying about something or whatever, and then I'll pause and I'll listen, and then I'll say, Lord, what do you think about what I just said and what I just asked? And it's interesting where it goes after that. Mm-hmm. It puts you in more of a conversational mode, a listening mode. Some really good things typically will come out of that.
And that's where we're at in the story of Jesus as we're looking through in Matthew 26, is he's going to the Father, and he is in anguish and emotional. Like, we really see the human side, the emotional side of Jesus in a lot of different ways, but here we see it where he is going to the Father, and he is asking and making a request, but also submitting himself to the will of the Father. And he spent all night and hours upon hours going, okay, what do you think? Is there another way that we can go through for salvation for all people, or is this it?
yeah, it's an interesting part of the story here, as we talked last week and kind of set up the scene of the seriousness of Jesus' conversation, and specifically as he talks to his disciples. It feels kind of like emotionally like a sharp turn for Jesus.
It kind of feels like not Jesus,
Yeah,
to a certain degree,
yeah,
right?
because it's like
Verse 30 to 38, this is Jesus. He's talking to his disciples who had setting is they went after the supper. By the way, killed it this last Sunday with leading communion on Sunday.
yeah. Scott set the pressure last time on the podcast. It had to be like all this.
I didn't set the pressure. This was, and you said that. You said that like during rehearsal, and I was like, I wanted to go. This is what Jesus said, man. I'm just was pointing to highlighting, but no. In the time we had, I thought it was above average. It was great,
I appreciate that.
meaningful, helpful.
Well, That just made your day,
Yeah.
right, Kyle?
Every other time you've done it was terrible.
Or average.
Average.
I'm
or
not
below.
even
But
comparing.
you're above average.
I'm
now.
saying as a whole, I've done it. I'm saying as
Yes,
a
I
collective,
hear what
I've
you're
done
saying.
subpar communion because it is a
It's-
hard time frame environment. We talked about it last week.
It's
But you
hard to
did a
make
great-
it meaningful
I'm making
in such a short period of time.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
make a compliment here,
Thank
guys.
you.
You did a great
Appreciate
job. And I told you this off air.
You
the
did
other
a
day.
great job making the compliment, and then you just kept going, and you kind of. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate
Story of my life.
Yeah.
Say a great thing, and
Just
then mess it up by keep talking.
Yeah.
Just know when to stop.
it. So, what were you saying about verse 30 something?
Where he
I
says,
was
"My
just trying to-
soul is deeply grieved." Is
I
that
was
the
trying.
one?
Yeah, I was trying to make the setting. I got distracted by myself. They left dinner. They're out in a grove of olive trees. It's nighttime, and he's spending some solitude with a couple of disciples, but then also with the Father, and really just personally connecting with God and being sure his cup is filled up emotionally, spiritually, mentally, as he enters into the next few hours, which are going to be incredibly difficult on all of those fronts. So he is intentionally spending time with the Father so he is filled up and that he can serve and love others out of the overflow of his life because he's all too aware of what's coming up next.
Yep.
And he does that through petitioning, and it feels kind of like, wait, is this the same Jesus?
Yeah, like again,
Because his soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. And you go, you feel that kind of overwhelmedness and sorrow and anguish, and it just. I spoke about it this last week and shared some of my story, and it's just, yeah. When I said Jesus, our God knows our emotions, knows what we go through.
It just seems, again, I think you go through what we just talked about last week, and this like confident guys, this is what needs to happen, like. I mean, like rebuking guys in some parts of, saying like, don't do that. And he's like, no, this, and then it's like, now he's like, it feels very different emotionally that he's, I read this in a commentary. It's a little wordy and but I like the way this author
Okay.
put this. It says the Gethsemane scene graphically illustrates the dramatic tension between human desires and dread and the divine necessity to submit to suffering and death. Jesus is therefore not a victim of a tragic twist of fate, but a willing sacrifice committed to honor the wills of his Father. Because it's easy to look at this and go, wait a minute, Jesus, you just said, like, I'm going to do this. I'm offering up my life. No one's taking it from me. And now this scene kind of seems like you're sorrowful, you're crying, you're bowing down on the ground, you're laying prostrate before God, going like, can we not do this? Like, how did those things mix? And
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think about a lot of experiences that we have in life. You can talk about it. You can even say, I'm going to do it, or you can, anticipate it. But then when you're in it, I'm sure there's plenty of triathlete stories or metaphors that would compare to that.
you
It's
could,
like, hey, I'm
you
going to
could talk about your triathlon experience.
Well,
you have
my one and my only.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
Because you've seen me do a bunch, and
Yep.
Then you wanted to jump in on something.
So I wanted to jump in, and we were going to do a three-way relay thing. I was going to do the swim portion, and then somebody else the bike and the run. It was a family thing, and so I was excited about that.
Yeah.
I felt comfortable doing the swim portion.
Who you guys did? Who was the
Jeremy
bike?
was the bike.
Jeremy
and,
was bike.
and Neri was the runner.
Amanda?
Amanda,
Did
one of
Amanda
those two. I
run?
can't remember now.
That's a good question.
Might have been Amanda, but anyway, got really sick. We were over in the Seattle area in the hotel room, and I got really sick the night before. I mean, I was running like a really high fever, had sweats, and it's like
Nerves at all part of that? You think, or was it
maybe, but I was legit sick.
Yeah.
I mean, I was running a really high fever,
like
and
almost like a food poisoning?
like a
hit
food
ya?
poisoning thing. Only, Anyway, long story short, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. It's like I got to call Jeremy. He's going to have to swim. I can't do this because we had to show up at like 6. So I'm just literally a few hours away. But I felt like my fever broke. I felt like I think I can do this. I don't know if I have enough energy, but I'm going to try. So I've been talking about it for weeks.
Right,
months.
to your point.
Yeah, talking about it. And then I decided to do it. And now I'm out in the water and I'm realizing I don't have a lot of stamina. I don't have enough calories. I don't have enough energy. I just went through a horrible night, didn't get enough rest, but I'm going to do this. And it was a struggle. But I did. I completed it and got out of the water and was glad it was behind me.
And glad you didn't have to do any other part of that
Exactly.
triathlon. Yeah. And you have swimming background. You swam in high school, boating,
very
like
comfortable
in
in
the
a-
water.
yep.
It's just, but it is different when you're swimming that distance and
And
not
with people all around you, get
people all
elbow
around,
in the face.
early, sick, and you hadn't, let's say you hadn't trained ideally.
I had not trained, but I had trained some.
You had trained some.
Yeah, not
Yes.
not up to your standards,
Not,
but
not ideally to be really ready to like
I was
race
above average.
it. All right, we're above average around here, doing it. So to your point, it's a lot different when we're going through and practicing things versus just the theory or the idea of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could just say, hey, yeah, I'm going to fast for a couple of days and really give myself to the Lord in prayer and stuff. Okay, great. But by the middle of day 2, it's like, yeah, some food sounds really good right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you say, the reality. So you take that like a race or something big, anything big, like a big test. And you're like, I studied, I prepared, and then the reality of it sits in. We were just at dinner the other day talking to a friend whose husband is in law school and just deep in it, right? And like, we're gonna be preparing for the bar and all this kind of stuff. And like, yeah, you can prepare, but then like the day of, you're like, okay, snap, this hits you. And so you think of all those things, and you probably have something in your life that's like that. And then Jesus is preparing to take the wrath of sin of all mankind, right? Like the depth of that, where he's talking about the cup of this wrath of like the sin of mankind on his shoulders. Like,
We have no way to
yeah,
comprehend.
like, oh yeah, that triathlon was real big, or like that test I was taking, or that thing that I had been like. The weight of what he's about to do is setting in, and so there can't not be this emotions and this, I don't know, experiences.
Yeah, and it's far greater than what any of us have experienced.
Absolutely.
At
And we
all.
have no ability to comprehend what it was like for Jesus to anticipate the sin of the world, the entire sin of the entire human race, past, present, and future, all on him in just a matter of a few hours.
Yeah. And he pleads, and it's recorded for us. My Father, if it's possible, may this cup being what we just talked about, the cup of like suffering, salvation, and redemption, and so the process and what he's going through. If it's possible, can you take this from me? But yet, like you just read, Kyle, with the commentary note, yet not my will, what I want, but I submit to you and your will. And so he is feeling it all, and he is going to experience the thing that blows my mind, the taking on the sin of the world, and the Father, Son, Spirit. Like there's something that happens there where there's a loss of some kind of relationship. I'll just say it that way. And so if you've ever felt the loss of a relationship here on earth, we have a God who understands those emotions. I love it in Hebrews 4. It's encouraging. 4:15 says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin." Like he gets us. He knows us. He knows what we've felt, and he can sympathize with us. He's felt that like anguish of, this is really hard, but I want to please God. And he did. So that's comforting. That's encouraging. That's the kind of God we serve and who knows us. And it's wonderful. It's really, really helpful when we're going through some hard things.
Yep. Well, in fact, it is a motivator. I think a lot of times we wouldn't want to come to God if we thought that he couldn't relate to us and didn't understand what we were going through. And the fact that he does is a motivator. It's like, oh, I am going to go to him because he gets me. He gets it. He understands.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys have more thoughts. I just have probably more questions than helpful thoughts. On verse 38, where his soul is overwhelmed, or he's feeling anguish with sorrow to the point of death. Like that just, again, seems so heavy, so real, so raw, so kind of unlike Jesus, but yet it's fully Jesus. So if you guys have any helpful things there, because I think I said it and then tried to take it back this last Sunday, like that Jesus had anguish in his soul when I was thinking about this moment, and I apparently hadn't read it recently enough or keyed in on that because I had read it, but I go, is that right? Is that even a good attribute to put towards Jesus? And I'm going to stop talking because sometimes it gets worse. When
No,
I keep
I think that's what I mean. I think it's pretty obvious. Again, Jesus is kind of using his own words to describe how serious the situation is. Again, and Craig, Scott, you asked Craig a question about like the sickness the night before. Was that nerves and stuff? Like Jesus's physical body is being affected by the emotions he's feeling. Like that, it's that serious. Again, and we've all experienced that. Again, I think even middle school and high school students, the day of a test, and their stomach starts hurting, and their like physical body is being affected by the way that their emotions and their brain are working. That's like how our body works. Jesus is the same. Like you said, you just read Hebrews. Like his emotions and the thoughts of what are happening and the depth of this sinking in is affecting his physical body to the point of anguish and stress and all that kind of stuff. Like again, you said, like, yeah, he's us. He's felt these emotions. So I don't think it's unfair to say that or unbiblical or whatnot. Again, because I think we have to understand Jesus from a fully divine but also fully human. He was sorrowful. He did have stress things, right? Like in the way that we understand that, we say that as like a negative thing. Like, well, no, Jesus would have trusted God fully, and this is a great observation.
And he does trust him fully.
100%, right? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that these big things aren't overwhelming and I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough thing to even describe and like you say, speak about. But
right.
I think pointing to this experience is evident of Jesus's humanity, but also his. Again, if he would have just walked away and said, "No, I'm out. I don't want to do this. It's so hard. I'm going to stop," that would be a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But his response to say, "Nonetheless," and Craig, you said it earlier. Nonetheless, your will is going to be what happens, even though this is going to be the hardest thing anybody in the entire existence of mankind has ever done or ever will do. But I'm willing to do it because it's what needs to be done.
I think it's interesting. I don't know what to make of it, but I think it's interesting that he prays 3 times the same thing. So he goes the first time. I mean, we don't have any detail, and at best we can only speculate. But why does he go back the second time? Was it not clear? Did he think maybe asking a second time would yield a different answer? I mean, it just makes me wonder what that's about. But that aside, after the first time, he comes back to the disciples. Oh, and by the way, before the first time, he actually he told his disciples, the larger group, "You stay here while I go over there and pray." But then he takes Peter, James, and John. Very clearly says that in verse 37. Yeah, and then those are the ones that he spoke to and said, "My soul is crushed or grieved even to the point of death." And so then he went a little beyond them. So we have the larger group, then we have the 3, then Jesus goes off by himself. So we've got 3 different geographical locations here within the Garden of Gethsemane. And then when Jesus is done praying, he comes back to the disciples, found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, so it came back to the 3 apparently. And he says to Peter, he said, "So you couldn't keep watch with me for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying so that you do not come into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." I am really fascinated by the thread through this story of Peter's experience, because just earlier in this chapter and in the other Gospels, it's recorded for us that Jesus predicts Peter's denial. He's, "I know, Peter, you talk a good game. You say you'd be willing to die. You said
you're going to run the race, but then when it's race day,
it's race day,
you're
it's
going
like
to fold up and quit because a junior high girl pushed a little harder on you."
That's exactly what happens, right? And what I find interesting in all of that is Jesus' statement, "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." So in your heart of hearts, Peter, I know you're sincere. I know you love me. I know you want to follow me, but you're human. And you have flesh, and your weakness is going to get the best of you here when you deny me 3 times. Luke tells us an interesting thing about all of that. In Luke's account, he said, Jesus in this same conversation says to Peter, "Hey, by the way, Satan has requested permission to sift you like wheat." That doesn't sound like any fun at all, right? That's just, he's going to work you. He wants permission, the go-ahead to work you over pretty hard. And then Jesus says, "But I've prayed for you." He didn't say, "And I told Satan to get out of here. No way, you're not, I'm not letting you loose with Peter." No, he says, "But I prayed for you that your faith would not fail. Mm-hmm. And when you have gone through it, you go and strengthen your fellow disciples, your brothers."
Yeah. Because it's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
It's a
refining thing.
It's a refining. Is it fun to go through? No. But the result is you have something that is usable and tangible and will a seed, the wheat, analogy. You got to get rid of the stuff that was there is needed for it to grow, but to make bread out of it and flour and feed others or replant it in the ground and have 100, more, you got to sift it. And so same with Peter, same with us, that we need that refining work to bring out the good things, the Christ-like image in us to grow as we gaze upon him.
Yeah,
contemplate
absolutely.
him.
Yeah, and I think that Jesus, you speak to that conversation, I think it's a beautiful insight of Jesus expressing what he's going through to his disciples, right? Jesus is experiencing the weakness of his flesh, very literally.
And he needed his friends around him
Yeah.
as he's going through a hard time.
But he is making the choice to lean into the Spirit. Again, this continued contrast between choosing the will of God over his flesh, choosing the Spirit, the priority to the Spirit, which is inclined towards the will of God, not the things of the flesh. And so he's going, that's what I'm doing in this moment. Like I'm leaning in to the will of God, to my spirit, the Spirit of God. And you guys are over here leaning into your flesh. You're tired, so you took a nap. And I asked you to do something. And like this is the moment in which we need to, together as a group, seek the Spirit of God.
I'm going to just correct myself. Jesus wanted his friends to be around him as he's going through a hard time. I said needed. I don't think he needed, because I think he could have done it without them. Because he kind of did. They're falling asleep on him when he's asking them to, hey, my heart is sorrowful and troubled. Will you pray with me? Will you watch? Will you be on guard? And they let him down because they're over there sleeping. Because they'd, again, all day worked, prepared a meal, had this whole thing. So I'm going to retract. I'm going to go with wanted. Because he was in the desert for 40 days, Jesus was being tempted and didn't have people around him, and he did pretty good with that. He had the Father and Spirit, and then angels attended to him later. But he resisted temptation. He faced it, experienced, have fame, have power, have safety and security, all the things we long for, and he did not sin. He did not worship Satan. He continued to follow the way of the Father. So I'm going to retract from the need to the want to be.
Okay.
We need people around us when we're going through hard things because we're not God. We're less than God.
All right. Well, let the record show that
Okay.
Scott retracted.
I get nervous about things I say theologically that later I go, gee, I didn't even agree with that when I said it.
Yeah, then put them on the internet and then
Uh-huh.
live stream stuff, and then people comment on it.
Well, this is a great opportunity to remind our listeners that we have a responsibility as listeners, whether we're listening to our favorite teacher, preacher, our pastor, or those hosts on that Find and Follow podcast. We have a responsibility to search the scriptures, Acts 17:11, and see whether those things are so. They
Correct.
did that with Paul, and God's word commended them for doing that. Not that Paul was, in error or wrong, but they had a responsibility as listeners to him to, hey, check it out.
Yeah. And
Because none of us is perfect.
None of us is. And we misspeak all the time. We're like, oh, I meant to say that. I said this. And then we're just flat out wrong at times.
Yeah. One
Not on
time-
purpose, not intentionally, not malicious, trying to lead people astray with lies, but just, I don't know everything.
Well, and to your point, we misspeak sometimes and don't even realize it. One time, twice in a sermon on faith, I said that with God, all things are impossible. And I was obviously either wanting to say with God, all things are possible, or there's nothing. Anyway,
Yeah,
I
we gotcha.
misspoke. You got it. But I did.
If you keep talking, you're probably going to
I
screw it up even
I
more.
probably will.
Yeah.
But my point is, I didn't know it until afterwards. Somebody came up to me and said, "You said that not once, but twice." No, I didn't. And then I listened to it back, and it's like,
we did it.
Good on that, listener.
Scott, do that. Hey, did you mean to say that? It's like, no. And
Nope.
then I looked back. I was like, oh man, that was terrible. Why did
why
did I say it that way?
I don't mean it's so much different in my head.
I know, right?
The words that came out. But
Back to Peter's experience.
Yeah.
So later on in life, right, he's writing the two letters, 1st and 2nd Peter. And in 1 Peter, here's what he says. He let me just read a portion of it. He says in chapter 1, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his great mercy has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to obtain an inheritance which is imperishable, undefiled, and will not fade away, reserved in heaven for you." So God's preserving, protecting, reserving for us an inheritance in heaven. And then he says, in regard to you, Peter is goes on and is addressing his readers. You who are protected by the power of God through faith for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. So God's protecting our inheritance, and then he's protecting us by his power. In this, he goes on, you greatly rejoice, even though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been distressed by various trials. And I'm sure he's thinking about when he got sifted like wheat, when he denied Jesus. And the scripture goes on to tell us that when he realized what he had done, he went out and wept bitterly, one of the Gospels tells us. He says, if necessary, you've been distressed by various trials, so that the proof of your faith, being more precious than gold which perishes, though tested by fire, may be found to result in praise, glory, and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. What did Jesus pray for Peter? That his faith would not fail, because
Right.
our faith is more precious than gold refined by fire and results in the praise, glory, and honor of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Back to your earlier point, those refining experiences, as unpleasant as they can be, result in something really good.
Right. And Paul did the same thing. I've been soaking in on Philippians 4. In Philippians 3, he's
I like that. Soaking in on it.
Oh,
I've been
man.
soaking in on it.
I've been, yeah. He's just saying, I'm writing these things to safeguard your faith, knowing the reality of the hard times and trouble and suffering and sorrow and all those things. It's just the difficulty of being humans in a world that is eagerly waiting the full redemption of our God with the world and with our bodies. He's saying, I'm doing these things to help safeguard. And then chapter 4 is the famous chapter where it's like, rejoice always. And I'll say it again, rejoice. And connecting those two.
And he's in prison as he's writing that.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I
No,
don't-
he is.
No,
Yeah,
I know you make
yeah,
that
my
point.
question is why is Paul in prison? But we're not going to go down that road right now. And then he says, don't worry about anything. And I taught about that this last week and then share some more this week. But he's saying, I'm writing these things to safeguard your faith so that you can rejoice. You cannot worry about
Right.
anything, but pray about everything and bring your requests to God and let him know what you need and thank him for what he's done. And then think about these things. So it's connected to what Peter's doing. Hey, I'm
It's
trying to help your
absolutely
faith
connected.
not get derailed.
I shake my head in amazement that he could have that kind of attitude. If I was in prison, I think I would be like, hey, pray that I get out of this place.
Yeah.
This is a drag.
But
I don't want
ultimately,
to be here.
where else are we going to go for eternal life? Like, what else is what our soul needs and our spirit needs and our body needs, like, and our mind needs? Like, where else? What else? And here's my stab at it. And with running the risk of being theologically incorrect, go out on this limb. But just personally, just this last few months, just sifting through my own soul with Jesus and with others, and what maybe Jesus is going through, this is where I might get out on a limb, and why is it multiple times, is these layers of connection with God where there's a just being with God. And Jesus is probably experiencing, like all of us do, and I've been experiencing, it's a confluence of things. Did Jesus experience anxiety? Probably not to the degree that we do or the definition of which we
I was
have.
going to say there's some semantics there in
Yeah.
what we mean when we say that, specifically in 2023 in our culture
Right.
and our understanding of what anxious people.
Mental and health.
Yeah.
He's just so uncertain of the outcome. He knew the outcome is the joy set before him that he endured the cross. Like he knew it's the salvation of all people. But did he experience grief and sorrow? Yes. Was there a raging spiritual battle happening and he's feeling the weight in the spiritual realm that's
Absolutely.
going on? Yes. And so for me as a human, understanding what is my body feeling, what is my soul, mind, emotions feeling today in this moment, it's not just one thing and only one thing. It's a confluence of some anxiousness and uncertain about an imminent thing or a thing that's just like, I don't know how this is going to end, and trying to live in the future and not be present, trying to control things that are out of my control. But it's also just sorrow, just grieving the loss of things. And it's also just recognizing it's a spiritual battle and needing the Spirit of God to empower me, people around me to remind me of truth. And so Jesus doing it multiple times, going back to the Father and like, guys, are you with me? Oh, you're still sleeping. And he finally at the end says, just go ahead and
Just
get
go
some
to
sleep.
sleep.
But he just needs to be with the Father for a filling of his spirit in order to face the things coming up.
I didn't hear your limb that you went out on. What was your?
I didn't either.
Yeah, I was
I
like,
think
where-
that
Well,
sounded right to
Yeah, I
me.
was like, where are you going?
I'm projecting. I don't want to project what I've been going through with what Jesus has experienced.
Well, let
and
me-
taking my experience and going, oh, this is exactly what Jesus was going through too. I think there's elements of truth there. Well, I'm glad I didn't sound like a heretic for one. Thank you.
I just didn't hear. I kept listening. I'm like, where is he going to go? That's like a little controversial, or
Well, I took the hey, he went 3 times. Why? I don't know for sure. We don't really know. But is he just trying to change God's mind and go, are you sure? Let me come at you and here's my prayer request list. I don't think it's just that. I mean, he's praying those things, but it's there's layers to the relationship where he's just listening, and then he's just maybe going, I'm just going to be with you and know I'm submitted fully to your will, and so I'm going to be with you in this moment because his practical life on earth changed as he gets arrested, falsely accused, goes before people in trial, gets flogged, gets beat. It's going to feel and look different on a physical realm than him in the garden with the Father praying.
I think
You
you're
know
right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I think
Okay.
you're right about the layers. I think that's a reasonable speculation on why there was a third time. However, the scripture, Matthew 26, does point out that he prayed the same thing each of those 3 times.
Correct.
But he prayed other stuff. I mean, we don't know how long he spent praying. We don't have a lot of detail. We don't have any kind of, fly on the wall insight into what that conversation was like for Jesus and the Father. So I think you're right that there was just a being with and a letting it, just coming to terms with it. I think it's helpful too if we apply another verse that I think is relevant here, and that is the verse that says that whatsoever is not of faith is sin. And then Hebrews 11 says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. So, and Jesus prayed for Peter that his faith would not fail. So faith is a key thing. So Jesus experiences these things, but he never goes through those experiences or feels those feelings without faith. So does he grieve? Yes, but he approaches grief with faith. Does he experience this? Does he experience that? Yes, but he always approaches it with faith because if he didn't, he would have sinned. And to your point earlier, he was tempted in all the ways we are, but without sin. So he never loses his faith as he's going through those experiences.
Yeah, and that's the depth of which a lot of this we can't understand, right? This beautiful experience in the relationship of what Jesus is doing here. There's so much depth to it. Even if we did have a fly on the wall and we could watch the documentary footage, right, of like the depth of the Trinity relationship and Jesus and Father is so far beyond our comprehension. But that part's important. The part that both of you guys pointed out, the faith, and then the fact that Jesus does know the outcome, the fact that he is fully divine, and there's a understanding of him as having always existed, right, and existing forever, and understanding time very differently than we do. So that's where I would say, Scott, like anxiety, again, if we're talking it as most of us would define that with like worry and fear, those things weren't a part of Jesus' equation. He didn't fear because he knew the outcome. He had hope and faith in God and the joy set before him, right? So all of those types of things. But this anguish and that's where I think we get a little bit into semantics and understanding like, no, there still is some of this turmoil and very human experience with what he's about to do.
Yeah, because other times he looks at the city of Jerusalem earlier, I can't remember where he's coming in and just weeps and has sorrow and going, you guys have missed out on the beauty of the relationship with with the Heavenly Father, and it just breaks my heart that you've missed. So, Craig, I was laughing when you were talking because when you're saying like, oh, we don't know how long it took, the guys are falling asleep. I'm like, if it's like me, Jesus could have turned around. I could fall asleep in about 22 seconds, have a 6-minute nap. It could have been a real short prayer. Where
not for me.
For you,
I like what
you come back 2 hours later. Like I haven't even got tired yet. I tried to fall asleep on you, but I've been alert and watching the whole time.
I like what Matthew says the second time when he's like, I don't know what your translation says, but their eyes were heavy, or like they couldn't keep their eyes open. Like it's like those things, right, where you're trying and you got the head nod or something.
And you're just falling.
They're like, we were trying, but my eyes just got heavy. I couldn't do it anymore.
You mean like some of our listeners have when they're sitting there listening to us preach?
Fall asleep.
I literally, Literally, someone a couple weeks ago shared, didn't skip a beat on it. So it wasn't even like, oh, I'm really embarrassed to tell you this. It was like, yeah, I kind of missed that part. I was falling asleep while you're talking, and then like, oh, it's when I brought my dog Wilson, and then the dog showed up on stage. And whoa, I woke up and like, what are all the people doing? Well, I didn't quite know what to do with that, but there we are. There you go. Well, as we land the plane here, Craig, you made the point earlier. Jesus is not a victim, or maybe it was you, Kyle. Everybody gets
I
credit.
think we all did. At
Jesus
some point.
is not a victim in all of this. This is the
No.
plan before the creation of the earth. Jesus is completely in charge, but yet completely surrendered to the will of the Father. And so he is going to walk this plan out in complete obedience without sin for the salvation of all people and the restoration of all things. And we see that in the arrest in the next few verses here, which we don't have time on this episode to get into the details. But he goes, listen, well, one, Peter's packing a sword? Good on him for a concealed carry. I mean, that's great job, buddy. He had a sword on him. He was ready for battle. I like that guy.
I like that guy.
But Jesus just says, I'm not a victim here. This is the plan. Nobody takes my life. I lay it down willingly. And can I not call Legion of Angels and just like get after everybody? Sure can.
I could, but I won't, because if I did, I'd be sinning because I wouldn't be doing the Father's will.
We'd be going against the plan here.
Yeah.
I'm obedient to the
And
the
how do
will.
you just cut a guy's ear off? Did he miss? Was he aiming for something different?
He's a marksman, just a flesh wound. You don't want to kill the guy. It's like just hit him in the shoulder with a 9mm.
And
Crazy.
then interesting,
Just-
interesting to me anyway, is I forget which gospel account records it for us. Jesus takes the guy's ear and puts it back on.
Yeah, for sure he does. He heals it.
Like a
John,
magic
John
trick.
does.
Wouldn't that have
Yeah.
been great to
Yeah,
just
John.
be there to
I
witness
love.
that?
I love John's account of this story. This part
that
of the
John
story.
that says
Oh
it?
yeah, it's wonderful. And Jesus does the Jedi mind trick where he just says, "These aren't the droids you're looking for." And he goes, "You're going to let these disciples go. I'm the guy you want." And then the guard was like, "Yeah, we're going to let these guys go with Jesus, but we're just going to take him." It's he's fully in charge. is my
Fully in
point.
charge.
But yet not in charge because he's submitted to the Father. And that's the beauty of it. It's called love, and that's what love does. And so, any other thoughts as we land the plane here? I guess my only thought is just our God gets us. He knows all the emotions, the sorrow, the grief, the trouble we face here on earth. He's one that can sympathize with us. And so, even more so, if you're going through a hard time, just push into following Jesus. That's what we've done. That's what I'm doing even more. Because where else are we going to go to find help and support and life, eternal life? And so if that's you this week or you know somebody who is, be an encouragement in their life to follow Jesus even more closely, more deeply. Do that time on a personal daily level to connect with God and have your soul be refreshed and your mind, your heart, your emotions be restored and renewed. So thanks for tuning in this week, and Lord willing, we'll be back for another episode. All right. Have a good week following Jesus.